Campbell.
Here.
Cupertino.
Here.
Gilroy. Los Altos. Here. Los Altos Hills. Los Gatos. Here. Milpitas. Here. Montessorino. Here. Morgan Hill.
Here. Present.
Mountain View. Here. Palo Alto. Here. San Jose.
Here.
Santa Clara. Absent Saratoga.
Here.
And Sunnyvale.
Here.
All right, very good. Welcome, everyone. We've got a couple of items on the consent agenda. We've got the June 2019 Board of Directors minutes. We've got the financial report of June 2019. We've got the roundtable invoices. Do I hear a motion for all of them or a subset? It's up to you guys, or a motion maker. Very good. Thank you, Liz. We've got a motion. We've got a second. Any discussion on any of these items?
Second. Sorry, Tabby.
No.
Oh.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. Thank you very much. All right. We've got Senator Bob Wieckowski that's with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You did such a great job last time that we had you join us again.
Somehow I thought it was on the other side last time.
It was. It was. Yeah. We just.
Although I did have problems finding the right room.
Apologize for that.
Hey, I represent one precinct in Sunnyvale proudly in the state senate. So I hope just don't let those people know that couldn't. The West Conference room. Well, thanks for inviting me back.
Absolutely. So we've got 45 minutes that we allocated to this because we very much admire what you're doing in Sacramento, but we'd like to get more insight and more visibility into what's going on. Both the bills that you've been authoring and been putting forward, as well as what you see coming down the pipe and some of the stuff that's going on right now as you guys go into your recess.
Yeah.
And such. So we'll do that. And again, as questions, can we take them as we go, or would you like to hold them until the end?
Just jump right in. That's I'm fine with questions. I mean, I have some things to get through, but if I don't get to them, that's fine. I mean, I think it's always exciting at the end of this session. I'm a former city council member. I really didn't appreciate, and even today, don't know if I appreciate the nuances of the end of session and what can happen, and especially with Gavin Newsom. This is round one, so he's this is the golden time. We got the fire bill done, which was a huge lift for him. I can go into detail there, but it's not like Jerry Brown. The curmudgeon always had his three things that he was going to do, and then he didn't want to talk about anything else. So he had the greatest ideas in the world, and it was just like, these are the three things that we're going to work on. And then what would happen is that he needed your vote, Rowena, and your vote, Rich, and then you had things that you need to get done, so the three became five. So that that's how it went around. And So we sit down. We've got probably in a better position than we have been. I think I intimated about last time is when I got elected in 2010, we're $26 billion upside down. People, I mean, this was a different discussion. It wasn't. We were cutting stuff. We had the whole redevelopment discussion, and it was different. Now we've done a pretty good job of paying down that wall of debt. I think we've made the last payment on debt. We're doing socking away a bunch of money, doing the things that people expect you to do in government, right? Thank God for all the employers in every one of your cities that are making all that money and paying their taxes. And also a little tentative about how long does that last.
Well, could I ask if you just move more in the middle? I'm blocking a little bit.
Asking that for years.
Sorry, I'm very fun.
Politically, you're spot on.
Right. And then also, we're just so nervous about what's happening with the White House, the trade barriers and the tariffs with China, and this yo-yo with the stock market that's going on. All our allies in Europe who are pissed off at us, and it's just that what we're doing to have this prosperity, it's just there's just an edge that we have. That's probably an understatement about the edge, but we're careful and cautious about when this next recession is going to come, and we'd like to, I think it's going to be some nincompoop sort of move where it's like we're shooting ourselves in the foot, as the proverbial.
I think we've
Like a trade war?
Yeah, right.
we've shot it enough. I don't think there's any left.
So, all the stuff, all the mechanical things, I think we can thank Jerry Brown, and I think, Gavin has included it. So, for local government, obviously, since I sit on the transportation committee with Val, and I've got I'm the budget chair of the transportation, things are happy. Things are happy. It's good that the population is complaining about the local roads that are being improved, and I think it's 1.9 billion in project delivery on the state highway system, which includes the SHOP money and the STIP money. So you guys are familiar with that, but another 2 billion that are just out there. So that's the SB1, the gift that keeps on giving, that actually allows us to get our cities and the infrastructure back together on the roads.
Could you help me with those terms? The shock and the stip?
Yeah, the STIP is the State Highway Operation Protection Program. That's SHOPP. And the STIP is the State Transportation Improvement Program. So those are different funding levels that your VTA participates on. We categories where we spend money, which is designed on the state highway system. So it would be like 237, right? That could be a project that VTA sponsors to come in to do that, but it's technically a state highway system, which is different from your local roads.
Thank you.
And, where do we start? Sitting in Santa Clara County, we're talking about housing and the challenges that we have with housing, and what are we going to do? And, there's the legislature, at least in this budget, is done, we've got to have chunks of money coming in. It's, I'm cap and trade guy, right? So, one of the things that you don't hear me talk about, although I'm always yelling at Mary Nichols about it because everybody loves Mary and I'm the only person that yells at her, is on the auction, it's what your minimum bid is. What will you sell allowances for pollution, for people and last year it was $15 for a ton of carbon. Now, I'm not taking any credit for bitching, but I did bitch all year. It's up to 17. Well, most people.
How much?
17. So that's why the auction proceeds got to 3.8.
Interesting.
3.8 billion.
Cool.
The people who are handling, people are saying that the economists, that we're going to need to be about $60 per allowance for metric ton of pollution. So the argument that I keep having is that if you want to smooth that out for consumers so they don't get shocked, you're looking at $5 a year. In order to get from 20 to 60 in a decade, do the math. I'm not that smart, but you can do the math. So if we didn't do anything for 2 years, we were at 15 for 2 years, or $15.60 or some adjustment. You've got to. There's going to be pain coming in the future, and that's a continuing bit. But within the cap and trade, $800 million goes for housing. Which is the best kept secret in the world, that people forget that those programs that the county and the cities participate in. We put in $1 billion, or identified $1 billion to reduce homelessness. So we've got $1 billion that's going to provide emergency, that's an addition amount that came in. So that's local governments are going to be able to get emergency housing vouchers for their folks. There's a rapid rehousing program, and then there's the emergency shelter, the navigation centers that are going to be available for funding.
You said you didn't mind an interruption.
No,
but,
I don't.
both Rod and I are on the air board, and so we dealt a lot with the cap and trade, but I thought you might expand a little more. Not everyone seems to understand cap and trade. It's
Right.
it's an
Right.
interesting concept, and one that
Right.
we've certainly
So what we
accepted.
So the challenge that we have is the cap and trade was supposed to be the backstop. We were supposed to have all these programs with stationary sources. We know the biggest polluters in the state, the ones that are covered, are oil refineries and oil processing. We got that. What you don't know is cement. Cement is a big polluter. And then the food processors. You know, all those little, when we go to Safeway or Whole Foods, whatever our preference is, and you get this little bag of baby greens, that food processing is a huge polluter or emission emission producer. So the idea is that we're supposed to marry this price that people pay for polluting. The polluters will pay for that, which is supposed to create the incentive for them to make investments into their facilities to reduce it. And we've, you know, the idea is that you want to give them some allowances if they're unfairly, you know, competing with outside sources, whether it's Nevada cement or China cement. When if we don't want to have leakage that goes out, they use the term leakage, is that we're going to clean up our refineries and everybody else is going to get there. So part of the discussion, which is maybe a diversion or a distraction, I guess, is that you know, my friends and my colleagues, Ricardo Lara and De Leon, were worried about pollution, the harmful pollutants, the black carbon that affects the health of people. Well, that's sometimes black carbon is mixed up with CO2 that comes out of your tailpipe. So if you clean that up and you clean up and it also obviously has bad health effects on people, right? But it's not the CO2 which is causing the warming sensation in the atmosphere. So what happens is that we set these allowances, so for how many metric tons you produce. And my biggest complaint is that we have so many, like 800 million allowances or some crazy number, and I wish I had it in front of me, that are free, that we give out to polluters because we don't want them to go out of business. And we want to see a gradual increase. So the system that we have, the one that we rage about, is that it's collecting some money, and and it's just enough money so everybody's in a happy place. 3.8 million bucks. I mean, I'm like Santa Claus every year during the budget, because everybody comes to me with their special projects that they have that they want to have in their town. How to spend cap and trade. I was the only person who voted against the Safe Drinking Water Act. I mean, it's $130 million to clean up the most polluted, so everybody's got a right. You know, Bill Monning, my friend, ran the bill because I argued, and I will continue to argue, and when I'm gone, people will say, Wachowski was right on this, is that we took money from a carbon reduction program and paid for a water contamination problem. Now, Monning, if you were here, he says, well, in the big picture, the drought caused the lack of water, which exacerbated the overpumping of the water. We in Santa Clara are guilty of overpumping the groundwater here. We did that for years. We got, you know, in your part of the world, you got the sinking. We know that, and now we're taking, 2 years ago, we took money from the waste treatment to ship it along the freeway to recharge the groundwater, you know, because the toilets to tap was not the best term that we use when people, but it's the same idea. If it goes into the ground, people can live with that. So the cap and trade program produces this, but trying to be disciplined in order to use the money to reduce the greenhouse gases. I mean, I will say to you, you're my friends, is I got my ass kicked in the budget process. I had $280 million that was in for long-term resiliency and reduction of fuel in the forest and wetland restorations, which are these other elements that create, you know, carbon sinks that would reduce them. I got rolled. I got. You know, it didn't work out. I would still make the same arguments. I'll still try to present on the Senate side something like that, because you want to incentivize industry to make those investments to reduce the greenhouse gases. We've got a lot of people at the table that say, this is a polluting place here, I want you to fix it. You know, labor my friends in labor, I argued that you can't use money for workforce training because you're going to be in LA training. If they're up in the forest and they're taking down logs and all that, then I got the nexus, but we were supposed to be very close on the nexus to do it. And so I put money in the general fund instead of in the greenhouse gas reduction fund. So it's the big four now are the SRA tax, which we had a tax on people who live in the fire ring to pay $150 so we can to have the forest fire guys come in there and talk with them, or we can tell them what trees to cut down, how to do defensible spaces. That's costing us $80 million. The manufacturing tax, Jerry Brown special, that's $35 million. The jobs is $35 million, and then the safe water is $130. So of the title, about 8% is for peripherals. I guess I'll just put it like that. So that's that.
Thank you.
So that takes up a lot of my time. You know, I'm going to Chile for the UN conference on climate. I probably will lead the Senate delegation since everybody else is termed out, so I'm the only one left from the gang of the Fran Pavley and those guys from the Paris conference. But really fighting for adaptation. You know, one side of it is to reduce the greenhouse gases, but the other is to help all you folks plan what are we going to do when we have sea level rise. You know, what do we do with extreme weather? And you all have staff and people are working on it, but you really need resources to have somebody from the state and the regional government and your locals to sort of work on the best plan as you update your housing element or update your general plan, but also how do we deal regionally? I mean, you know, and then also to have a couple of projects that people can see that are going to work. Something nobody's heard about was in the Prop 68 budget, because again, I have that budget. This is when we voted for the parks and water bond. We got $4 billion, so this year we spend another $1 billion. In there is a project to address sea level rise in the Bay Area. Now, I can disparage San Francisco because they're not in the room, but or Oracle. A lot of cities say that they've got the money. They want to build a seawall in order to block protect their assets, so that all that water can go to your cities, right? Because it's going to leave their cities. So the largest river that feeds into the San Francisco Bay is Alameda Creek, which is in Niles Canyon in Fremont. It comes in here, and back in the 50s, the Army Corps of Engineers went in, which they did to a lot of our rivers, is they cemented it. They changed the natural flow of the river, the old river, and they made an express lane, and they laid out cement there because they wanted that water not to flood our cities, but to run out to the bay as fast as it can. That's not such a good idea now when you have sea level rise to move all that in. So what they're going to do, they have a project that we went in, and it's about $50 million it's going to cost, but it's going to sort of reproduce in this flood control area the natural river. Now all right, so that seems nice. Everybody would like to have the natural river going in, but what we didn't know is that when we have these extreme weather events where we have the Pineapple Express comes in, what happens is all that water coming in would take all that sediment and float it out into the bay. So what would happen naturally back in the day, all that sediment would settle in Redwood City, Menlo Park, not in Atherton. Nothing settles in Atherton. Just kidding. Hayward, all this stuff. And the biologists say that by reconstituting the river, it can have the same effect as 1 foot of sea level rise. And we never even heard of this project. So it actually is funded in the budget, and that'll be so it helps out everybody as we plan adaptation. Last time I was here, I talked about in housing. I talked about the ADUs. So I have another. Bob Wykowski is Mr. ADU. I was sort of like a baby when I was here last time, and now I'm like the ADU guy. And I have a bill, SB 13. I think it's on your watch list. From the author's perspective, last year I had 831. Everybody hated it. So what have I done differently? Because I've basically used the housing and community development. We've had hearings up there on accessory dwelling units, and the department who handles it talks about the barriers for people to build it. Because what we've seen is in the cities that have adapted the ADU bill, the 3 that got passed in 2016, we see permits are up, we see constructions are up, and people are building up. On the 290 cities that haven't adopted an ordinance in 3 years, just saying, they haven't seen such robust change. So what did they identify? Or what did I take out? From last year's bill, I wanted to not allow minimum lot sizes. I took that out. Because some Los Altos Hills, wherever they are, have a 10,000 square foot minimum lot size. Not exactly embracing transit-oriented development, but that's what the law is. So I took that bill out. I had floor area ratios. I had minimum floor area ratios. I took that out. That was a problem that you have in older cities, Berkeley, where they have and then setbacks. I took that out. I took those 3 out. Some of these old 1920 houses that are 800 square feet, but the lot is 6,000 feet. The cities will say you can't have more than 50% of what your existing house is. So there was that. So I walked away from that. So what's left is home ownership. I said you can't have home ownership requirements because you don't have home ownership requirements in any other type of housing. You don't have an apartment, you got to have the owner live there. You don't have a duplex, a townhouse. We don't require home ownership in any other ones. And besides, the banks hate it because the banks, if you put that requirement in, the banks would have to take possession of the house in order to foreclose on it. Now everything's happy now and everybody's paying their bills, but banks don't take physical possession of it. Nobody has that job in the bank. So what they're saying is if the cities adopt those ordinances, they'll start calling in the loans with people because they don't want to. They can't police that. So what they did in local governments, they said we're going to give you 5 years to do this, and I didn't want to do it, but I took the amendment. So it said so we're going to have a 5-year no home ownership requirement, provided that you adopt your ordinances that comply with state law. Because again, a lot of cities haven't adopted an ordinance. Some of them have adopted ordinances that the Housing Community Development Department has said that's in violation of state law. So if everything's perfect, it's running. The other is fees, impact fees. I didn't want to have any impact fees for anything, so the deal's been cut that 750 is the size. So anything 750 and below pays no impact fees, which the new report came out on Monday, sort of helps define what impact fees in the past. You guys have clarity. After 750, it's a proportion to the regular size. And the other is the amnesty program. Now, the amnesty program, right now, we estimate that there are 500,000 bootleg units, unpermitted units in the state of California. LA has about 300,000. So think about that. So whatever and I'm a former city council member, whatever we collectively have been doing, whatever laws we have, nobody's followed the rules. Nobody has gone in and paid the fee or got the permit. They just converted their garage or they built the unit invisibly in the backyard. That's just it. So what are you guys what have I done? So I said again, once your law is in compliant with state law, you can immediately claim that ADU as part of your RENA numbers. So that's the deal. And then also we give authority, although this language hasn't been worked out, we give authority to the assessors, because assessors can't just walk in and start assessing your property. They can't walk into a business and say, we want to look at the machines and start doing the assessor. They have to be invited. So we're working on the language that would allow the assessors to go in, because in the magic world of Bob Bykowski, all these unpermitted units would be, even before they become, they're habitable, you guys would be able to get the increased assessed value of those. All of that's off the books. So, ballpark math, because the A's and the Giants are playing right now. I don't know how they're doing, but if there's 500,000 units, and we think that they're all worth $100,000, that's a lot of money. That's like $5 billion worth of, worth of assessment, so it's, whatever it is, $500 million worth of value to people. Every city's different, and they would do that, but, that sort of tries to balance off what you have, so.
Could you clarify, when you say non-permitted, so there, we can, as cities, get the tax benefit of that, but what about actually having an inspector go in and make sure these ADUs that did not have prior permits are actually inhabitable?
Right, and that's the 5-year period that you have.
So they have to go in and get a
Right,
permit?
right.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clarification.
They have to pay the permit, whatever they didn't pay the permit, but the impact fees that they have, because, we're all over the board with the cities. Some cities, it's $70,000 to build, Dublin has, the person build a 300 unit in the backyard for the disabled son. And the impact fee for the city of Dublin was $30,000. And all the adult son was doing was moving from his bedroom out into this new unit. And they said the impact for the city, the police services and all that was 30. That's rather a large fee to pay for 300. So this is saying under 750, it's nothing. But you get that assessed value. You would do that. New construction legally would do it, but you can go through. So each city would get your RENA numbers. So you say, okay, we've got this. I have said publicly, I continue to say, I think all ADUs are by definition affordable. Now, I know somebody from Mountain View is going to say, but they're paying, the ADU is down the street from me is $2,250, but that's, just generally they're that way. What else?
So let me clarify, if you don't mind, this question, going on to his question. So this amnesty program for those ADUs, so you're saying that if someone has an inhabitable or has someone living in an ADU that we're not sure is, habitable or inhabitable, you're saying they have like a amnesty period for 5 years to get it permitted, so right now they're safe, right?
Right. I mean, I think when we say habitable, that's a term of art, because what some folks would say is that, some homes are uninhabitable. So if the home is really uninhabitable and the fire department red flags it, it gets closed down. The ADUs don't get any special treatment. What happens is that since you never got it permitted, you may have built it to code in 1985. It may in fact be built to code in 1985, but if you're walking in right now and you got this 1985 structure, they're going to say, that's not up to code, right? So I get that. I'm talking about those people who built it to code, more or less. You never know because you weren't there. And you can tell on these bootlegged units. The guys who do this, they can look on the outside and just look at how the countertops are and the outside and know what's behind the wall, because you really don't know until you break it down. But the folks that do this have a good idea. So if it's safe and habitable, and I always say, look at the house. Look at the 1985 house that person is living in. But that's a term of art.
So, but then someone has some from the house outside. It looks, like a decent house, 2,000-year-old, built 2000. So, if the house from the outside you can't tell,
Right.
we can't go inside. You're saying they're safe because they're protected because
No.
we
I'm
aren't
saying
allowed
the
to.
homeowners right now.
Everyone's
The city's
protected.
not doing anything. The homeowner's not doing anything. So you say, okay, here's an amnesty program.
That's what.
and you go
Yeah, I'm
in
just
and you say-
clarifying your amnesty program.
Yeah,
I
it's
just want to be
you
sure.
say it's January 1, and let's say my city has enacted a new code that is in compliance with state law. Bum, 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 bum. We've got, everything's going down. I go down there and I say, I have a bootleg unit, was built in 1994, and I want to pay my permit fee, but I want to get it legalized. I want to have a legal unit, and actually, what I'd like to do is actually take off the garage door and put in a window and a regular door. That's my plan, right? That's my plan. So when they go in, and maybe they don't want to do that, but whatever, I would assume that cities and residents want to upgrade their house, because it's their house, right? I mean, it's a normal thing. And if you've had this quiet, semi-legal, source of income, you want to continue with the source of income. You like to be able to advertise it. So I want to give them 5 years in order to make, because you come in, every city's different. The planning departments and the folks are going to have discussions, right? Because again, I'm clear that you don't have to bring it up to 2019 building codes. That's not the standard. It's safe and it's safe and livable. So that's a term of art that's going to get to them. The idea is that this is a source of revenue for the cities. This is a source of fulfillment of your arena numbers that you have that already exist, and they're there. People are already living there. They're already using your city services.
And it provides housing for other folks.
And it provides housing for other folks.
So we're going through we've adopted similar strategies in Los Gatos. I'm just curious though, when you say to them, is your bill so that each city decides the building code department will go and determine what's considered safe? Is there going to be definition in your bill that's a statewide? Who decides what's safe?
No, it's left up to, I couldn't get that.
So the building department
I'm
then. asking
asking for the Housing Community Development to come up with standards. They're going to come up with like ADU standards, because we have, if you build every ADU to 2020 Title 24 standards, you'd have a glass house. You'd have to, your energy efficiency numbers would be so great that you'd have this 300 square foot house would have to be glass, because you'd have to achieve, it would be a monstrous window that you would have. So we're going to need a different standard. And I'm fudging. I don't have a different standard. I'm just saying safe and livable.
But, and so it sounds like HCD will determine that.
Yeah.
Got it.
They'll come up with guidelines. It really is going to be left to the cities, because I think some cities are, unless it's
We've created one already.
yeah. Some of the cities are jumping ahead, but this is going to be a statewide, so you can say, okay, it's the cliche, good enough for government work. If it was safe, we'd like everybody to do energy efficiency upgrades in all their houses. They can, but we have a lot of, I live in a 1959 house. I remodeled it with my wife 4 years ago and didn't pay any impact fee. Got 440 feet. My next door neighbor may have the original roof on it. It's a different scene. So would I like them to upgrade their house and their electrical? My parents still have 2 prongs. It's 1959. They never upgraded the living room and the bedrooms, so they don't have the 3-prong where you can see the inspector from hell goes, well, that doesn't have 3 prongs. Says, well, it was built in 1979. The 3 prongs didn't exist. So I don't want. I'm trying to create an amnesty program so that we get to, okay, this is a livable space.
Okay.
We got a lot of people living in 1927 houses that are livable space that are not condemnable. The condemnable people, okay, that probably the house is going to be condemnable also, if that's it.
Rod's got a question?
Yeah, so many of us are concerned about some of the institutions that we love the most. Our public schools, for example, the idea that teachers can't stand to commute from where they can afford to live. And I think when we talked previously, we expressed some interest in the idea that there would be a benefit to a new ADU owner in putting a deed restriction on that would allow, say, missing middle housing, if, for example, for the first 5 years, they were willing to accommodate BMR at some level, right, to not make it a market rate unit in exchange for a reduction of fees. It would seem like where this is at, we basically put that on the table to incent the production, but I can tell you in my city, what will probably happen is these will become market rate units, right? Because people working at companies are more likely to occupy these things than the other, and I'm just wondering if you would give any consideration. My second question is, on the 750 square feet, under 750 square feet, no impact fee, what is an impact fee? Is it like a park dedication fee, or is it?
Yeah.
Or are they the fees that our planning staff actually spends to
To
review
process.
the plan set?
Right.
All the cost-based fees that we have, so
Right.
maybe you could help us
Well,
with those.
Allegedly, when we did the first bill, these are supposed to be ministerial approved. Got 60 days to do it, so that's the first thing, because the idea is these pre-planned, I mean, there are builders that are doing the same ADU in San Jose or Gilroy or wherever, and they get a different planner, and the different planner starts from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like you just said, I just saw her and I got this approved. It's the exact same house and the exact same lot. So part of that is maturing of city staff that they get it. So these are not the actual fees that you pay to that are the cost of processing it or doing the inspections and all that. This is the extra fee that you say, oh, by having another unit. Because remember, what cities did is that, when we said pass your second unit, we just conveniently said, well, that counts for a whole impact fee because we got Prop 13. You're trying to make money. I get it. I get it. But so these are park dedication fees.
Such things would be counted
Right,
as an impact.
right. The typical, the new development fee that you would charge them, you can't do that.
And
and
as
school
for the
fees, and-
incentive
and
for missing middle housing, some hook we could get to say to the homeowner, can you help us here by
Yeah.
making this a BMR for a certain time?
It's not in the bill. I mean, sitting here now, it makes sense.
I
to me.
know, that's
It
why I'm
ma-
asking.
it makes sense to me because you want to have it, the challenge is always when you deal with these big bills and you're statewide, you're realizing that some of them are just, by definition, are going to be, it's right. We're in a unique situation in Santa Clara County where it's hard to think of where you would be unless you're in a rural, next to San Benito someplace and nobody,
I have a question. So school districts have a lot of land.
I need
Have you
some
ever
answers
considered
there.
creating a bill that allows BMR homes to be built
I
on
want
some for
the
the teachers?
We have with the School for the Blind, because I got, that they've come to me because I haven't done it for local school districts, because, local school districts, they're exempt from all of us. They're in they're in a parallel universe. But the state actually controls, in Fremont, you have the School for the Blind and the School for the Deaf. When they moved down from Berkeley, they got big, if you've ever been there, they got big properties. So they've come to us about, because they need state approval, about coming in to build teacher housing for their teachers. And I have come back and said, my staff has come back and said, why don't we do more than that? Why don't we build, see if I can get state funding and state assistance to build more, because that's state land. That's state land. So you would have the spillover effect that the people, from either new teachers. I mean, I know that teachers are been around for 7 years are struggling too, right, with the rent. But you think you've got no chance of getting a new teacher to San Jose or Milpitas or Sunnyvale if they don't have a. Now, living in Fremont and driving to Sunnyvale is not a dream, right? But it's if they at least had, in my mind, sort of a 3-year, pay off your student loans and live at this subsidized housing, and instead of building, 60 units, build 360 units and have that. But for regular reduced, market rate, I haven't done anything on that. I mean, I've talked to teacher groups with the idea, instead of having government do it, just use their alumni list and make it easy for them and walk the alumni of, retired teachers through the process. Have the school Teachers Association come in and say, city, we'd like to build these ADUs. We got this guy, this prefab guy that's got these things at this price. By buying 10 of them or 20 of them, we're going to do that, and we want to put them all over your city. So we're going to go to our alumni and they're going to voluntarily agree to make that at below market rate. Now, what they want to do is they want to ram it to teachers, right? I mean, we get that, but then you would, if there was some miracle occurred that the teachers didn't fill up the places, that's a natural thing. Obviously, the city could do it to retired city employees, but those like firefighters, they scatter. There's no good fish in here, right?
Bob, we're just about out of time.
The only thing I wanted to
Yeah,
touch on
go ahead.
is the wildfires, that we did, a big chunk of legislation to create this fund on PG&E to allow and set limits on what recovery were. The ballpark number is 40% of what your claim is. In addition to that, in the budget, we put a boatload of money into fire prevention, and also, some new apparatus. We're buying about a helicopter a year, a helicopter and a half, but we've got like 13 fire trucks and 7 of these C-130s. I don't know if we took all this old Vietnam era equipment and we've been running it in the Forest Service since Vietnam War. Right? So it's got its useful life and more. So that's it. Oh, and the
Great.
recycling. I will bring back a big recycling bill because our recycling centers are closing down.
Yeah.
Help is needed. And the Norwegians replanted, I guess, closed. I don't know if your cities have replanted facilities in them, but they closed all the facilities out of business. So I know there's going to be a big push for Band-Aids. I have a more comprehensive idea on recycling and bottle bill reform.
Just a quick one.
A quick one.
Oh, yeah.
And then we'll get on- we're gonna-
I didn't hear an answer. The school impact fee, will that be waived? Or
Yes.
is that will?
Oh, right. Well, first, schools don't pay any impact fee on 500 feet or less. Nobody knew that. Not even the lobbyists for the schools that were objecting.
No, but-
So I said, so start, time out, you don't collect any impact fee on 500. My argument to the folks is that we have a lot of divorced individuals. And even with the homeless situation, if you can't go into court and say, I have a bedroom for that child to sleep in, you don't get the bedroom. You don't get the child. So that's where 750 comes in, because you get a bedroom. I'm not going to box myself in on ADUs and not allow women separated or victims of domestic violence with children not having custody of their kids because they don't have a bedroom, because they can only afford, even in Sunnyvale, an ADU. So that's the backstory. I mean, it was not just me being crazy.
Well, then it's not an ADU issue problem. Obviously, it's another issue.
Right. But I'm saying this is a housing type. Why have a bedroom? Why have a bedroom? Because at 500 feet, you got efficiency.
Bob, thank you very much. We really appreciate you coming down and speaking to us. We appreciate what you're doing on the ADUs. I mean, that I tell you, of all the bills, it seems to be the most reasonable approach to housing growth. And
Well, I'm not
so
Scott
we appreciate it from that
Wiener. I'm
side.
not Scott.
Yeah,
And-
you notice Scott isn't joining us this
Right.
evening.
No, it's just it's just a different way, and I underscore it because when we had the 15, remember last year, 2 years ago, we had the 15 big housing bills. We had all the type of stuff. My ADU bill wasn't in it. It was sort of like, it was just like, oh yeah, this is a nothing burger. This is here, and you see the cities that have run with it have done it. So this is sort of, we're gonna level the playing field and let everybody run with it.
Great.
Thank you, and
Thank
thanks for what
you.
you guys do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Very good.
Aren't you guys on break now? Shouldn't you be on?
We just came off a break.
I'm gonna take a
I used to be on the council.
Yes, you do.
There's no break.
Help yourself to pizza.
Thank you, whoever.
All right, Margaret, maybe you can give us an update on the Legislative Action Committee activities this afternoon.
So we met earlier this evening and received a report from one of our ABAG representatives, Councilmember Chris Clark from Mountain View, and a couple of items. The ABAG took an opposed position on SB 330, the Nancy Skinner bill, which we also have taken an opposed position on. And then the majority of our time was spent on AB 1487, Assemblymember David Chu's bill. Originally, it would have established this new agency called HABA, the Housing Alliance for the Bay Area, to oversee putting ballot initiative measures on the ballot for housing funds. That bill is being rewritten as we speak. Their session's been out there going back next Monday, the state legislature. ABEG and NTC had proposed amendments to this bill, and those amendments would effectively eliminate this new agency. And ABEG had asked that ABEG and in conjunction with NTC be the agency that would be overseeing any potential ballot measures for housing and how that's being distributed. And with that, ABEG would also take the lead. So NTC, and there's a lot of talk about merging, so this all needs to be worked out, but essentially ABEG would be the lead agency to...
Merging MTC and ABEG?
Yes. So that's
Which they've been discussing for many years?
Yes. So in the interim, while they're still discussing that, this housing legislation has come about, and originally they wanted to create a different agency, but at the request of, I would say, ABEG, MTC, and many of our cities, our cities association took a position that we wanted ABEG to be the agency should this new entity be created. Assemblymember Chu, I'd say, took that all into consideration and has agreed to these suggested amendments by ABEG and NTC. So, unfortunately, we couldn't get the actual bill language, the amended bill language, but in light of the report from Chris Clark, and ABEG did take a support if amended position. Our cities association originally took a opposed position on 1487, but this evening the LAC voted to recommend that we remove our opposition and stay neutral on the bill. Mm-hmm. And so I would like to, I guess, make a motion to that regard.
Okay, so we've got a motion on the table. How about a second?
I'll second it.
All right, thank you, Liz.
I heard the whole thing.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Oppose.
Okay, we've got two opposed,
And Los Gatos abstains.
and Los Gatos abstains. Did you get that?
I'm curious why
Okay,
the
very good.
opposition. Why you oppose
Why?
being neutral? Yeah.
Because the bill, as it currently reads, has almost no content in it. All we have is a suggestion about what's there. And I also, many of our cities have taken positions on this or have legislative advocacy. So I think out of deference to the fact that we don't have language, and also to the idea that, frankly, they're going to do this or not, but I'd sure like to see the language. I'd like to have our individual cities have a chance to consider something as important as this before we take a position. So it's not that I don't appreciate the efforts, and during the LAC I suggested that perhaps we could write a letter appreciating our support, and we'd be happy to reconsider the position at such time as when the language is available and we had a chance for our members to actually review the thing. So it's a timing thing.
So staying neutral is different than no position?
I think it's the same.
It's pretty much the same.
Yeah, but I would have been more comfortable with the position Rod suggested. So, and our city took a position about opposed as well. So I'm not comfortable with the position taken.
I respect the majority that said,
Yeah.
let's go neutral, so I'm okay, but, given my city and where we've been, I had a hard time making that switch without seeing the actual bill. So that's it, Gina.
Thank you.
I'll stop there.
Our challenge is, state legislature is scheduled to end session on September 12th, which is the date of our next meeting. So this was really our last opportunity to weigh in either way. So that's how we chose.
Margaret, don't I recall that a number of you have worked really closely with David?
Yes, so Mariko, Larry, and I went to meet with him, and we had a good meeting. He was very open to our concerns and comments, and I would say what he's done with accepting these amendments were very much in line with what he said to us. So I think that because of that, because he did listen to us, I think we wanted to try to at least get to a neutral position.
So I respect that.
And we just have a policy that if my town takes a position, I can't go against that position without going back to council. So it's logistics.
Good.
And
Good discussion.
yes, and one more item. The LAC recommends we oppose SB 592, which I guess is characterized as the 2.0 SB 50 2.0 by Scott Wiener. This was where he got and amended a different bill, completely different, nothing to do with housing, and has now made it a housing bill to basically strengthen the Housing Accountability Act. Really broadening the I guess, ability or taking away more local control on housing, approving or denying housing projects. So we recommend an opposed position on that.
Was that I can't remember the terminology, gut and stuff or something?
Yes, gut and amend.
Is that, I don't know if I have the correct terminology,
Yes,
but
so
something.
he took a bill, I forget what it was about.
Cosmetology.
Bill. Completely took out all of the language and then put the housing language into this bill because that bill had already been moving through committee. So one, just we don't like the language. Two, we don't like the process. And so I'll make a motion to oppose 592.
I'll second. Oh, I guess I shouldn't second Mountain View.
I'll second.
Actually, I guess I can't make the motion.
No,
Yeah.
you can't.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. I'll second
I'm
that
not the voting member on the board.
Okay.
So Lisa, can I insert, or somebody else want to make the motion?
I said I'd make
Okay.
it, yeah. Actually, so the first one we talked about, the same thing.
That's
So you
right.
want to substitute my name for that too?
Got it. Thank you.
It's good things. Somebody's paying attention. And so we have a second on that one as
yeah.
well. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Got one abstention. Jack.
We will decide whether to meet in September,
Right.
depending on where this all lands. Thank
Okay.
you.
Very good. Thank you, Margaret. All right. Next up
I have a
is
quick
the.
question, because I know that we all have taken these positions, and I heard earlier that you do write letters and send them in. At what time do those letters get posted on our city's association website?
When I have time.
Oh, okay,
haven't
I
had
just
time.
was-
They
I was
often
just
are in the
curious.
packet. I often put them in the packet as well. So some of the letters are on the website and they're on the
Okay.
legislative side.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, item C. This is a roundtable update, and we have Mary Lynn Bernal.
Here.
Yes, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for having me. It's been a couple years since I've been here. I know some of the faces, but some I haven't gotten to work with. I'm Mary Lynn Bernald. I'm a city council member from the city of Saratoga and a past member of the Select Committee and the Ad Hoc Advisory Committee. And now I serve as the chair of the Santa Clara, Santa Cruz Counties Airport Community Roundtable. And I'm going to give you a little background and then move on to where we are now. In 2007, the FAA began modernizing the nation's air transportation system through implementation of the Next Generation Aircraft Transportation System, NextGen as we know. As part of NextGen, the FAA implemented the Northern California Optimization of Airspace and Procedures in the Metroplex project. Beginning in 2015, the NorCal Metroplex project introduced new aircraft arrival and departure procedures from SFO, Oakland, San Jose, and Sacramento International Airports. Several of these new procedures utilize area navigation technology, which two of us know is called RNAV. I don't know if anybody else in the room does, which allows for reduced separation between aircraft in flight and more concentration of aircraft flight paths. So, consequently, people living in communities beneath these flight paths began experiencing an increase in aircraft noise. In response to complaints from the communities in the South Bay and Santa Cruz County, oh, you know too. Yes, there you are, Lydia. And Steve should know now too, back in the back room. Okay. In response to the complaints from communities in the South Bay and Santa Cruz areas, congressional representatives SU, Spear, and former congressional representative Sam Farr, in coordination with you all, the Cities Association, convened the Select Committee on South Bay Arrivals in 2016 to address the noise complaints arising from aircraft arrival and departure procedures serving SFO. The Select Committee issued its final report in November of 2016 and included several recommendations for addressing aircraft noise in the South Bay area. Subsequently, the City of San Jose formed the Ad Hoc Advisory Committee on South Flow Arrivals in 2017 to address noise issues associated with weather conditions which result in changed aircraft operations at San Jose Airport. The Ad Hoc Committee issued its final report in May of 2018. Both the Select Committee and the Ad Hoc Committee final reports were submitted to the FAA for their consideration in making changes as to how aircraft operate in and out of regional commercial service airports. One of the recommendations made in the Select Committee's final report was the formation of a permanent roundtable to address aircraft noise issues in the South Bay and Santa Cruz County. In June of 2017, congressional representatives Eshu, Panetta, and Kana asked the Cities Association to form a permanent roundtable. And then in October of 2018, your directors voted to initiate the formation of the roundtable, and we commenced work in February of this year. The RT's mission is twofold. I speak in my own little terms now to try and compact everything. The mission is twofold: to provide a forum for addressing community noise and environmental issues.
Thank you.
And to make recommendations to the regional commercial service airports and the FAA on aircraft-related noise and environmental issues. Go again. We have a proponent over here. Currently, the roundtable includes representatives from Santa Clara and Santa Cruz County and the cities of Capitola, Cupertino, Los Altos Hills, Monte Sereno, Mountain View, Palo Alto, Santa Clara, Santa Cruz, Saratoga, and Sunnyvale, as well as participants from SFO and the FAA. The bylaws were amended to allow staff members, Steve is one, he's sitting there, I'm glad to see him here tonight, and the round table, from the 2 county offices to become voting members of our round table. All other members are elected city council members, officials. To date, we have held 6 meetings. 2 in Santa Clara County Supervisors Chambers, 3 in the City of Santa Clara Council Chambers, and 1 in Santa Cruz County Supervisors Chambers. From the beginning, it became apparent that the lack of a venue for Select Committee and South Flow Ad Hoc Committee updates, for community input, for technical expertise, and interaction with the FAA has created a very frustrating situation. That is why passing the resolution affirming the SCSC Roundtable as the appropriate organization to follow up the reports of the Select Committee and the South Flow Ad Hoc, and to address ongoing community concerns related to aircraft noise and environmental issues can be hailed as a major accomplishment. We did that at our last meeting in July. Other accomplishments include, and here we go, providing that venue throughout our region for community input and FAA reports and updates, becoming the centralized communication venue, setting up a website, and by the way, if you want to contact us, can you name it? Gmail?
scroundtable@gmail.com.
There we go. Okay. Responding to community emails requesting technical clarification on flight track questions. This has been an amazing aid that Steve has brought that many of our own members don't even realize, that when people write into our roundtable, he will give them the reasons, the technical clarifications on flight track procedures, why they can't shift this way or they can't go down that way or up high or whatever.
And who is he?
Steve Alverson, and ESA is the contracted consultant that you all, or some of you interviewed and hired for our consultant. We have been receiving needed trainings and or briefings from ESA on Noise 101, proposed Loop 5 departure procedures at San Jose, proposed Pirate 2-star, which is standard terminal arrival route into SFO, and review of the FAA Instrument Flight Procedures Information Gateway, which is called the IFP. Receiving reports from the FAA on the community roundtable process, the FAA's procedure development process, the FAA's responses to questions on Pirate 2-star procedure and Loop 5 procedure, departure procedure, and FAA's review of the Select Committee on South Bay arrival recommendations. In addition, we received a detailed presentation of the Select Committee process from Chris Zanardi out of Joe Simitian's office, which was very helpful. These are really good and necessary trainings that we've had to come up to speed. Also receiving a presentation by Glenn Hendricks on the South Flow Ad Hoc. And finally, 2 other items, arranging a very beneficial tour of the SFO tower and runways. It was a real eye-opener, and if any of you get a chance to do that, go for it. And the last thing, transmitting letters to the SFO Roundtable and the Oakland Noise Forum, which I sent out, requesting a formal process for regional collaboration among the 3 of us. Information garnered over the last 5 meetings by our consultant has been the catalyst for developing our strategic plan and our work program. Those items were presented to the roundtable in draft form at July's meeting and will be agendized for the August meeting. We're getting input, and individuals that are sitting here tonight have been very good at helping us focus on what needs to come to pass so that we can lay the foundation for the roundtable and prioritize through regional consensus our goals for the upcoming year. For all that effort, because I think you might have questions on that tonight, ESA has billed us through January 30th $106,451.42. The contract amount is for $236,986.70. So we're halfway there, sort of. I, as chair, am now tremendously aware of how valuable this venue is. As a startup organization, I don't want us to lose sight of how much we have already actually accomplished in just 6 meetings. While there have been so many diverse, read scattershot demands, we've been all over the place. It's because there was not a venue and people were very frustrated and not feeling appreciated or heard. So there were all these demands on the organization during this short time. I'm also aware of how much there is left to do. In conclusion, I'd like to invite San Jose and Milpitas and other remaining jurisdictions to join this essential body your participation in this conversation is most welcome. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Marilyn. Any questions?
That's pretty comprehensive.
Yeah. Oh, so we've got a
What's the
question.
biggest complaint that you have? Besides the no vibrations and.
No, it's noise. It's primarily noise. A sub-factor of that is pollution, but it's mostly the noise.
Relentless, steady
Yes.
noise.
Yeah.
Do you
Yes.
have a decibel reading? Well, from your individual cities?
No.
So it's just general,
The FAA has a weight, a standard that is not, it's an averaged weight that really doesn't measure the true impact on an individual city. And there's a lot of discussion about how that should change.
And that's a
Fortunately,
nationwide issue, that's not.
it's a nationwide, yes. It's one of these things where California has its own, and the FAA has agreed to accept it, but it still is not, it's not acceptable. You will be hearing from cities that are saying, I am regularly hearing 83 dB. But when you weight it against the nighttime where you don't have that kind of noise, then and it gets averaged in, it throws that 83 off.
so for the edification of the room, could you describe what 83 dBL is? Is it a car, is that a horn? What exactly, what level of noise?
It's an airplane flying right over your house.
Well, I mean, that's very subjective. I mean, if you're
Okay.
in Saratoga, the thing is 15,000 feet up in the air, but
Not
if you're in four areas of San Jose or someplace that's right by the airport, they're more impacted.
Let's talk about a full pickup, transportation truck, a box truck full going down the freeway on bumps.
Probably.
I think that's probably about as close as I can give you. I'm not the technical expert in the room. Fortunately, you guys hired the technical expert.
It will damage your hearing.
Yes.
80 and above will damage your hearing on a prolonged basis.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you, very welcome.
So I do have one question for Mary Lynn, actually.
Go ahead.
So it seems to me that you put a lot of work into the roundtable outside of the meetings. And I'm kind of curious, how many hours per month is that? And was that something that Steve was supposed to do? I see what Mary Lynn does, and it's a lot.
I will tell you that having the background of serving on both committees has made a difference in how I feel about it. So I'm coming out of a place of love and concern and dedication to the community. I think what has to be considered in the long term is we have not had an opportunity because of that scattershot situation to have us be able to see what Steve and ESA brings to the table. And I mention that because there's reports that are on our website that he has given that are incredibly detailed. And because we are having to deal with individuals that want to speak all the time at every item and put their own input in, we have not seen what he's doing. What I have done is out of love, and I think those of us who have city staff expect a lot of staff to do that. But this is a different situation. This is setting up an organization that I believe is essential and needs to go forward. And so, yes, I'm putting a lot in. I think 18 months to 2 years from now, or maybe even 6 months from now, we will be in a better position where we will be able to see exactly where your dollars have gone in hiring this man who is considered the gold standard of all those that are in that type of work. And I had hoped at the last meeting that I had been able to see his expertise. But we had so many people outside of the roundtable that wanted to speak. And this has been probably the largest hurdle, is that frustration that I talked to, because they need to be heard, they want to hear what's happening, and we have a handful of discussion items that need to be discussed at any one time, and the FAA has to bring their people in too. Once the FAA has brought in their people, once we begin to get into the hardcore issues, pirate, loop, surfer, all of this, Big Sur, South Flow, we will see what his expertise is. And that's what I'm pushing to get all of the other stuff out of the way so we can actually see that, because that's what a roundtable is meant to be.
Well, I appreciate all the time you have put into it. To me, it looks like it's a tremendous effort. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Do you have a quick question?
Manny, no, I have a comment as someone who sits on the
How about a quick
roundtable
comment?
representing my city. And that is, I know that when the request went out to the cities for appointees to this, you were asked to commit someone for 2 years. That is really important. And I hope that you will stick to that as we finish up this first year and move into the second year, that you do everything possible to keep that consistency, because the learning curve for being effective, unless you were part of those early committees, is very steep. And we have someone sitting in this room who's going through that learning curve. I won't mention who that is, but I would just urge you to try to maintain that commitment going into 2020.
Yeah, good point. Thank you. All right, very good. Next up, we've got an update on the RENA Task Force. Chappie?
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank the task force members. I see Liz here, and Carmen, and Margaret, who have been participating on that task force. We got a timeline from ABAG, and we have a subregion formation due date of February 2020. We're on track. We've had 3 meetings in total, and we've been working to provide and develop a draft MOU, a resolution template, and a staff report for the jurisdictions to review and consider. The MOU went out, and we used the bylaws that was approved by the body to form the basis of the MOU to reach an agreement between the cities, the county, and the Cities Association for the formation of the sub-region. That draft MOU has gone to your city managers, and we have gotten quite a bit of feedback from that MOU, and we definitely hear the concerns and reservations from the cities about some of the issues that are in the MOU, and we're incorporating those comments and suggestions, and we will get that back out to you as soon as possible. Our goal is to have the board approve the MOUs in September, and again, we're on track for February to complete this process. So that's my update.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions?
Andy, if I left out anything?
No, we're trying really hard to make sure that we incorporate all of the questions, the concerns. We're trying to figure out what a best way is to have maybe a webinar or some way to have to get kind of the experts who have been working on this with us, so that the staff can all call in. We don't know if we need to do a separate one for elected officials and one for staff, but we're trying to figure out a way to make sure that everybody is able to ask the questions that they need, because our goal is the main component of the roundtable was that each jurisdiction would have final control and nobody could make you do anything that you didn't want to do. But the idea was that we needed to sit down at the table and talk about it. And so all of that Chappie was talking about is what we're trying to make sure is the fundamental basis for the MOU.
Very good.
I have a question. Sure. So you have that draft MOU, and then you sent those questionnaires that the city managers are supposed to respond to. I have not seen that, and I'd like to see it. So I was just wondering if you made it available to people on the executive committee or to everyone you did, because I didn't see it in the packet.
No, well, we haven't put it in this packet yet. It was right now where we sent it to planning staff, and on the first round, planning staff, and the city manager was supposed to receive it and send it to their attorney. So all of the jurisdictions have responded, and so it's very much in staff form now. But as soon as it's cleaned up, there wasn't any reason to send it to the masses, and I mean all of the elected officials, if it wasn't in. We wanted it in a readable form. We're doing track changes kind of issues right now, and making sure that we have taken the bylaws and because we had previously approved bylaws. We're just trying to make sure that that you guys are looking at apples to apples, and we didn't want it to be we didn't want you to look at something and get everybody all concerned that this isn't gonna work. We wanna make sure it's in the right form before all of the electeds see it, so.
Larry?
The next version that's released will be a red line version.
Yeah, we'll have.
Make it easier for staff to say, oh, here's what
Yeah,
changed.
we're hoping
Just trying to make
we're
sure.
hoping to have a nice form for you to see really soon. I'm meeting actually tomorrow with attorneys. Laurel Pravetti, the city manager from Los Gatos, has been on the task force. So we have a few staff people. We're trying to get in a really in a good form before we send it out to everyone. And I hope that is acceptable to everyone.
The goal is that this body will review it in September.
In September.
With the goal of what? Of
Passing
making
it.
Passing it.
So late in the, before that we do that, we would have a webinar. And the idea of a webinar is that people can call in on a webinar from their computer and participate, but if you can't participate, you would still be able to watch it later. So we would put it on the website.
And we're looking for a resolution to go to your council by no later than December.
Okay.
But it's due in February, so obviously
Sure.
we don't want to make this a nail biter.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, both of you. All right, next up, we've got the report from the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, and I believe Rod and perhaps Liz will be reporting on
So
this.
Stay where we are or go up at the end, Rod?
Let me just slide up here.
There you go.
That way
Yeah,
we
let
can
me
tag
switch
team
with
better.
I'll just do a quick switch from one end.
Projecting anything or no?
Oh, yeah, hold on, I'm having
Okay,
a
oh, good, so I'll get out of the way here so I don't block.
You know that part of our responsibility to you as appointees from this body to the Air District is to come tell you about what's going on. So we saw a 10-minute opportunity, maybe 15, Liz said.
Maybe 5, so.
Well, we don't get to
the other way.
We don't get to do it very often.
And so we thought we'd take an opportunity to, since it's slow summer as opposed to hectic fall, and we know our subcommittees reports get compressed in the fall and so forth, and we take the opportunity in August. I'll note that Margaret is also, is she still here?
Yeah.
Margaret is also on our board, appointed by the county supervisors, as is Cindy Chavez. And so we also, but Liz and I are the particular appointees of this body, and so we're given this report.
And
Margaret
Rod
can
is
sign this.
actually in line to be the grand poobah next year.
All right.
Good job.
Just like I was
Perfect.
mayor. No,
Special hat.
Okay. Okay. If we can't have a little fun, we can't do anything, right? So we're going to talk through this set pretty quickly and just give you a smattering of the really broad set of interesting things that we're exposed to and asked to consider as policymakers at the agency. We move a lot of money through, a lot of grant money through. We approve a lot of command and control regulation. We consider what's going on with problems of our day, right? Climate change causing wildfire smoke, causing wildfires that then have a health impact on our area. We interact with the US EPA, and I have a little funny story about that. And then there are issues of some local concern within our county that we'll end with. Okay. So this is traditional air quality monitoring as we've done it for many, many years. We send out a truck like this. We park this in a secure location. It costs about $1 million and a few $100,000 every year to operate one of these things. We have to go out manually and collect samples and actually weigh a filter under controlled pressure, temperature, humidity conditions. It's all pretty labor intensive.
So do the dots indicate where the
And the
locations
dots
are?
indicate where these traditional stationary facilities are. Some monitor certain things and some monitor other things, but in general, this is the traditional way we've done things. So next slide. We have a project now underway with a startup from San Francisco called Aclima to drive around the Bay Area. Hit every road like 20 times with a car that has this box in the back, that white box that you see, and the rear window replaced with a bunch of nozzles and air sensors that feed data to that box. And so we've contracted with this company to the tune of $6 million to collect data in a very fine grain. Why? Because if you look at the prior map, we can tell you gross things at an aggregate level and even at local proximity from those sites, but it's just too expensive for us to populate everywhere. And so this is our new means of really seeing where there's localized impact. And we know from our work in some of the communities we serve, the West Oakland, where the port is, that there are severe local impacts from various things, from tires throwing up stuff around the port, from ships that come in, and have their diesel generators on, at the refineries. And so we want to get a much more localized view of air pollution and figure out what we don't know. That'll help us make better informed decisions about, where we should be, or where we should be looking. Next. So this is, I had to show this picture. The Air District doesn't have one of these yet, but it's a really fun toy. It's a very large DJI drone fitted on the top with a continuous monitor sensor, and then in the bottom there's a container that can actually hold an air sample for more fine-grained analysis in the lab. So very excited about that. Liz is going to talk to this slide.
I didn't know which ones I was doing, which is great. So
Makes it more fun that way.
a surprise. So one of the reasons that I really enjoy serving on the Air Board is a lot of you know I have a background in public health. And if there's anything the Air Board is all about, it's health. And in every form you can think of, whether it's outside pollution or the fires that burned or whatever might have happened, our bottom line is health. So among other things, we look at, obviously, the toxins, and with every rule, regulation that we come up with, there is always pushback from those who don't want these rules in place, particularly from the refineries. So the second one, particulate matter, which is so-called Regulation 6, is just as this says. This has to do with cardiovascular disease, dust mitigation, and further mitigation of other particulate matter. So what is considered PM2 is that particulate matter you could particularly see after forest fires when our pollution in the Bay Area was equal to that of Beijing. And we learned later, however, that the masks you were carefully wearing didn't make any difference, which was unfortunate. Wow. Helped a little bit, but really didn't make a great deal of difference. But if there's anything that really contributes to asthma, to kids' breathing problems and so forth, it's definitely particulate matter. Ta-da.
Ta-da. I happen to sit on I'm the ex officio board member to the advisory council, so we get this really smart group of public health specialists, epidemiologists, people that know more about air pollution than like anywhere. And I'm sitting with them, listening to them hear from the EPA back in March. And the guy from the EPA basically says...
You want to show that slide?
Yeah. Oh, that's fine. Thank you. Yeah, okay. So this shows a correlation between various serious health conditions, respiratory, cardiovascular, metabolic, nervous system, reproductive health, cancer, mortality. That last one would be a nice way of saying death, right? And how the EPA views the relationship. And the darker it is, the more causal it is, okay? And these folks are debating the EPA person who's basically saying, well, we have all these findings, but we're not going to do anything with it. And they're really grilling him about why they wouldn't make stronger correlation for many of the items, looking at all the studies. And we get into the back room during lunch when he's off camera and he says, please take my data and do something, right? So there are good people at the EPA that are basically being thwarted in proposing what needs to be done to protect human health under this current administration. So one of our first questions thereafter, I say, so is there any reason why this scientific body can't inform our board, to actually take action, even though the EPA won't? And no, there's no reason why we can't do that. So that's what we're in the process of doing now, looking at rulemaking on particulate matter. The scientific advisory panel that the EPA had on particulate matter was disbanded a couple years ago, and the scientists on the main advisory panel were dismissed in favor of lobbyists. Okay, that's how things are at the EPA right now.
Are you thinking of doing rulemaking though for the statewide?
No, we do it for the 9 county.
Just for the 9 counties?
Yeah, our 9-county region. We've led the way now on toxics regulation with our new law. We're working on implementing that, for example. So we talked about health and wildfire smoke. It's a big concern. You know, there are things we can do perhaps to mitigate starting of these fires, but that's kind of over our pay grade. What we can do, and what we have done, is push a bill called AB 836, which is a bill by Wicks, Calra, and Chu, same Chu we're talking about, isn't it? To try to create some funding for wildfire smoke clean air centers. What is this? This is public schools, senior centers, other facilities. If you're willing to put a filter on, as hospitals have, for example, they have a very stringent standard. You can really improve outcomes for vulnerable populations. So the masks work sometimes, but you know, there's some resistance to going through them, and if you're already having health issues, the best solution is to go inside of a building where you have better filtration, and that's what we're promoting, and we've had a lot of love in the state legislature. We expect this. I think it's a 2-year bill now because it requires funding, but I think it's going to go through. And we can well anticipate that, you know, every fall hereafter, we may have another one of these really bad air days or weeks to contend with. Liz, you're going to talk about these couple.
And I might just backfill a little bit as far as the fires went. Probably the Air Board went in and their staff went into the highest gear I've ever seen, especially trying to get masks and so forth brought in. But they were simply on that all day long. I don't remember whether you have a slide on this or not, but as Margaret knows, what happened from the wildfires and the PR around that is that's led to us setting up a new committee, which will deal particularly with public health and also with the public relations that we have. Public relations were a huge problem with the fire, and people were angry, and you know, not surprisingly. So
was it angry because they felt like they didn't have enough information, or was the information correct?
I think sometimes people are just angry because it's happened to them, it's happened to their house.
Got it.
And also the notification system wasn't what they had hoped it would be. But, you know, I think we were fortunate that as many people did escape and that they saved as many houses as they could. That's a whole complicated kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I do think there was a lot of anger around what happened. So this is our grant revenues that's going to be coming in 2019 and where they will go. So there's a fund for clean air, mobile source incentive fund, the Cal Moya program, which some of you may be familiar with. It's been in place a long time. And then AB 617, and then talking about the NOx mitigation. Let's just spend a minute on AB 617, which is the bill that came out of a long discussion 2 years ago as to how we would deal in particular with cap and trade and so forth. This one sets up a fund to deal with communities that are in our 9 Bay Area counties that are particularly vulnerable communities, and we'll have an action plan for dealing with that. We were very concerned when this was brought in because it identifies areas that, really are needy areas, and a lot of times people don't want to be identified as being in that kind of area. But it makes a big difference, and most of you probably know where you live is going to make a whole lot of difference in how long you live. So this, I think, is a pretty substantial number that we've been able to put out for this year, but also pay a lot of attention when you have a chance to 617 and where that money is going.
May I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
So the map that you had shown on your second slide where you're looking at all the data sources, will that update that these areas? Like, are there any surprises in looking at the local data?
There will be
And
a
do they
lot
co-
of
Lots of measurements.
intense fence line monitoring at
Okay.
refineries, for example. So there will be large investments in Richmond. The first communities in this program are Richmond and West Oakland.
Sure.
Angela, I thought it was interesting, there's a lot of correlation with freeways and how close you are.
Yeah.
And that's what you
Being
see
close
in,
to a
like, the
freeway
Oakland
and all the
area.
diesel truck traffic is one of the single biggest determinants of health impact. That diesel PM is a big problem.
So then if I can, one of the things that I've always wanted someone to answer, with this big push for housing, where we can't put setbacks next to freeways, but you have data that clearly show it's not safe, how do you reconcile that?
Well,
You don't always.
we lost a lawsuit that said we could have some say over where projects go. It called reverse CEQA, right? We couldn't consider impact. We couldn't consider
External.
weighing in on projects near industrial facilities or freeways or whatever. We as an air district lost that. We tried. What we are working on, however, is we're working with CARB on incentives. Okay, so a lot of this money is going to electrify transportation.
CARB is California Air Resources Board.
And the mobile sources actually make up the biggest fraction now. With community choice energy, they certainly make by far the biggest fraction of our CO2 emissions, and that diesel particulate matter really is deadly. And so we have a campaign to eliminate, we talked about this I think when we were here last year, eliminate diesel vehicles from the Bay Area by 2033. It's an ambitious goal. It's going to take a lot of incentive funding from the state that pushes.
So how does that one next to the Lehigh cement plant measure?
We're going to talk about Lehigh.
We'll get there. It's coming up.
So this is how some of our funding was divided up in the last year, so you get some idea. If your cities aren't on top of grants, the Air District offers a lot of grants to cities, to fleets, for chargers, solar projects, bikeways, anything that has a chance to impact climate. So there's all kinds of programs. I would be sure that your city staff is plugged into the opportunities, and typically your public works departments are. So we wanted to talk, I know we're running out of time here, we wanted to talk a bit about the odor issue in the South Bay. It's a complex problem. There are a number of facilities.
It's stinky.
Milpitas, we have that huge problem.
As long as I've been here, since I came to graduate school in 1980, right, it's been a problem, and it may have gotten better, but it's still a big problem. And so it's complicated, and there's a lot of flows of material between these facilities, and I'd like to talk specifically about the improvements we've made on the next slide. Things that we've committed to do in the last year. We've now agreed to take on a comprehensive odor study of all these facilities. Nobody was willing to pick it up. Several of us pressed the Air District to take this on, and we have been through the RFQ process, and we're about to award bids, and we're going to get going on it. We have new rulemaking in development that, frankly, a lot of these facilities, not just these, but across the Bay Area, some of these large facilities are not very happy about. But it is our lever to actually see if we can get some improvements. But yes, these things will cost money. And so this rulemaking Some of these things will come to the Stationary Source Committee meeting in September, and others will come to the board probably in the first half, for a decision by the board, probably in the first half of next year. We worked hard. I worked with ROCON as district director to get San Jose to the table. They weren't showing up. And also the ZWED facility. So finally we have more robust participation of all the players, and we've, I think, been productive in giving feedback to the Air District on the proposed rules and also what the composition of the study should be. So I'm very happy to report that we have, San Jose is engaged and at the table as the overseer or owner of these facilities, even if not the operator.
So
And-
I will tell you, if you don't mind
Yes.
me making a comment, I've lived in Milpitas since 1964. I mean, we would always get the odor, that smell, every once in a while,
Yeah.
from a landfill. But ever since they put in that composting facility, which is out 24 acres,
Yes.
it's more, the smell is more, you can smell the rotting plant. It's, and people that have never smelled rotting plants, they just know it's some foul, stinky smell. But that, ever since they put that composting, it's been more frequent.
Right, and so
But I
they've
will
done
tell
some
you-
aeration, but we're gonna talk about
So
those
yeah,
things.
that's, so that when you
And we
say.
have this meeting coming up. We deliberately put this meeting in Milpitas so that more people from the South Bay.
Can smell it.
So we're bringing the board, we're bringing an important subcommittee of the board to Milpitas in September. That's the time we can talk in detail about it.
Yeah, but I'm glad you have it up there though.
Yes,
The composting operation.
we're eager to get this news out to everybody affected, right?
Yeah.
And then one more slide, and then I'm done. We're done.
Want me to pick on some of this one?
I can go through. We have, the cement plant has a new application in to dig a new pit. They did an illegal haul road, they just bulldozed it through with no CEQA, so they're under fines from the city and the county. They have in their new application a request to allow import of 33 million cubic yards of fill. And if you think this is only impacting my city, think again. This would be 600 trucks a day, 300 days a year for 30 years.
City too.
Yes, it would impact our freeways, and and these are diesel trucks, right? So this is a lot of additional impact. We have been, we made big strides on improving air quality with the new stack that went up, but there are remaining concerns on condensable PM dust and toxins that we're working on, as well as the very significant truck impact. And we have an Air District community meeting in Cupertino. We welcome you. It's the same day, September 16th, but in the evening. And that is that.
Very good. Well done. Thank you.
One thing that's really interesting, because when I was on the Board of Supervisors, we dealt with Lehigh all the time. One of the things I learned, which is sort of counter to all of this, is probably the best cement in the world comes from the Lehigh plant. And the guys who really are involved with roads and sidewalks and so forth explained that and said the Chinese cement is really such poor quality. So it's ironic that we have this constant push and pull going on with Lehigh, and yet their product is good. It's their process and sometimes their PR that's not as
Yeah, good point.
adequate.
Yeah. Okay, well, again, thank you. All right, item 4 on our agenda has to do with a discussion that took place relative to member representatives to this body and the alternates. And we discussed this at the executive board, and our decision was to follow our bylaws. Imagine that. So as stated in the bylaws, which basically says that the primary member obviously has a seat around this table. The alternate is the alternate that's been designated by the council that appointed that based on whatever process the city, had followed. And that's it. If there's going to be any other individual that comes in and participates, they need to contact our executive director to notify them in advance. Right?
And it has to be from the mayor or from the
City staff.
the city staff.
Right. Right, so the city, right, the mayor has to approve that somebody else other than the alternate would be sitting in and is a fully fledged voting member.
Yes,
representing that city. Okay, so anyway, that's what it is. All right, in sake of expediency, public comment. We've got a couple of slips here, and we're going to give a minute to each, starting with Greg Schmidt. Go ahead, Greg.
An alert.
Get the timer going.
MTC ABAG will start making critical decisions on Plan Bay Area 2050 in September. They need to get formal approval of their methodology and will follow with regional projections of new jobs. Their methodology of fostering jobs in priority development areas had focused growth in the West Bay, 2.5 times the number of jobs there than in the whole rest of the Bay Area, with half of them being new commuters. MTC ABAG designs their job projections with their own consultants, and there will be no public discussions of limiting job growth for the next 8 years. We all need to guarantee up front an open discussion process in their initial job growth projections.
Very good, thank you, Greg. All right, next up is Suzanne Kehoe.
So what do we want? What can we do? We want to have a full public discussion of a range of moderate and sustainable jobs and housing growth projections that will be balanced throughout all the Bay Area urban communities with realistic transportation goals. We cannot approve a Plan Bay Area methodology that does not include a full and clear public discussion of alternative jobs and population growth rates for their distribution into all urban Bay Area centers, and the consequences of each of these projections for our quality of life. Discuss and then tell us where we can forward our concerns. But we need much more public discussion on the effects of this for the next 8 years that we won't be able to change.
Thank you, Suzanne. And the last slip I have here is from Govind.
So, adding to, I had the opportunity to get myself educated about the MTC's RENA process, and I also came to kind of same conclusions that both the other members who have spoken to you about. There is a provision now that the cities can go back and look at the PDAs that they have declared, and I would encourage every city in the West Bay Area, in fact everywhere, to kind of start this process within your city with your staff, because this is the pre-RENA kind of period. So we would like you to kind of get involved right now to look at what options are available to you. The challenge is that any particular model, projection model which uses job growth, which it intensifies in the areas where there's already job growth, is going to cause more and more of congestion. And please, I think it's more for me to say to you, because you people know it much better. That transportation is the key to any economy, and we should not be limiting commuting related problems.
Very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Anyone else public comment? No? Okay. Let's see. City manager's report. Andy's going to fill in for our city manager, who is absent. And,
he was just going to tell you what happened at the July city managers meeting, and they had a presentation on the Caltrain business plan, housing and homelessness by Destination Home, City of San Jose, County of Santa Clara, and the City of Morgan Hill. And then they also spent some time on the Regional Management Fellowship Program. They do, the city managers work a lot with trying to develop the next generation of local government workers. So
okay.
that was it.
All right, very good. Do you
I'll
have
take a pass.
Do you have a, okay, you have a pass, all right. Any joys and challenges that you'd like to share? None?
The joy is we're gonna end early.
I'll start with the invite. How about a motion to adjourn?
Adjourn.
Motion. All right, all in favor say aye. All right, very good, thank you, everyone.